A rainy night, the streets of Florianopolis slick with water, headlights reflecting like tiny fireworks on the pavement. Inside a small, nearly empty diner, a young waitress named Clara wipes down tables, ready to close for the night. That's when she sees him, a boy no older than 10, soaked to the bone, hugging himself under the awning across the street. Most people would have looked away, pretended not to notice, but not Clara. Without a second thought, she waved him inside, served him a hot meal, and offered the one thing no one else had: kindness. What she didn't know was that someone powerful was watching, and he was about to change everything. Now here's the part that'll make you rethink how the world works. Ricardo Silva, yes, that Ricardo Silva, the self-made entrepreneur known for turning small ideas into empires, sat just across the street in his car, waiting for a business call that suddenly didn't feel so urgent. He watched Clara, not as a businessman, but as someone who remembered what it felt like to be on the other side of generosity. In that moment, Ricardo made a decision that had nothing to do with profits and everything to do with purpose. He cancelled his meeting, turned off his phone, and stepped into the diner, not as an investor, but as someone about to change a life. Think about it. How often do we rush through life, missing moments like this? Clara didn't help that boy for recognition. She did it because it was the right thing to do, but that single act set off a chain reaction neither she nor Ricardo could have predicted. What happened next? Well, it didn't just change Clara's life. It built something far bigger than either of them imagined. And by the time you hear the full story, you might start wondering, what small act of kindness could you offer today that might spark the next life-changing moment? It was one of those rainy nights in Florianopolis, where the streets shimmer under streetlights and the city seems to hold its breath. Clara, a 24-year-old waitress at a modest diner, noticed a young boy curled up under the awning across the street. His clothes were soaked, clinging to his thin frame, and his eyes held that unmistakable look of quiet desperation. Without a second thought, she waved him inside, her instincts overriding any hesitation. Moments later, she placed a steaming plate of food in front of him, not asking for explanations, just offering warmth. Acts like this aren't planned, they come from the heart. And little did Clara know, someone was watching every move. From the driver's seat of a sleek black SUV parked nearby, Ricardo Silva, a well-known entrepreneur, observed the scene with quiet curiosity. He was already running late for a business dinner, the kind of meeting people like him couldn't afford to miss. But something about Clara's selfless gesture made him pause. In the business world, Ricardo was used to spotting opportunities, calculating risks, and negotiating deals. But here, in the middle of a rainy night, he was witnessing an investment of a different kind, one that had nothing to do with profits and everything to do with humanity. The rain intensified, drumming against the windshield, yet Ricardo didn't move. He glanced at his phone, saw the flashing reminders of his evening schedule, and simply sighed. Closing the calendar app, he kept watching. Clara was now chatting with the boy, learning his name. Leo, just 10 years old, and asking where he usually slept. There was no pity in her tone, only genuine concern. For Leo, that warm meal was more than food, it was hope. And for Ricardo, it was a reminder that real impact often starts with the smallest, most unexpected gestures. What neither Clara nor Leo realized was that this moment would set off a chain of events neither could have imagined. Ricardo Silva sat behind the wheel, engine idling, his mind juggling the details of his next meeting. It was supposed to be just another business night. Handshakes, negotiations, deals sealed over fancy dinners. But his attention drifted from his phone to the small diner across the street. There, through the rain-streaked window, he saw Clara handing a plate of food to a boy who couldn't have been older than 10. It wasn't the action itself that caught his eye. It was the way she did it, without hesitation, without fanfare, like it was the most natural thing in the world. For a man who built his empire by reading people, Ricardo found himself intrigued. He'd seen countless charity galas and corporate donations, but this was different. There was no audience, no cameras, just a young woman quietly choosing kindness when no one was watching. Or so she thought. His hand hovered over the gear shift, instinct telling him to move on. But something deeper, more personal held him back. Memories of his own childhood struggles surfaced, moments when a stranger's kindness had made all the difference. The rain continued to fall, blurring the city lights into a mosaic of color. Ricardo leaned back in his seat, phone buzzing with unanswered calls. He could reschedule. Meetings could wait. How often do you witness the exact moment when someone's character shines through? He didn't know it yet, but that brief hesitation, that decision to watch a little longer, was about to change more lives than just his own. The next morning, the rain had cleared, leaving the streets glistening under the soft light of dawn. Clara was wiping down tables at the diner when a man in his early 40s walked in. Sharp suit, confident stride, but with a warmth in his eyes that softened his polished appearance. Ricardo Silva didn't introduce himself as the businessman everyone knew. Instead, he simply ordered a coffee and struck up a conversation, steering it toward the boy she had helped the night before. "Why did you do it?" he asked almost casually. Clara shrugged, as if the answer were obvious. Because no one else did. That honesty caught Ricardo off guard. In a world where people often expected something in return, Clara's motivation was refreshingly simple. She spoke about growing up in a tight-knit neighborhood where neighbors shared what little they had, and kindness wasn't rare. It was expected. "If you can warm someone's belly," she said, "you can warm their hope too." Ricardo listened, not as a businessman assessing an opportunity, but as a man remembering how it felt to be on the receiving end of such quiet compassion. Before leaving, Ricardo reached into his jacket and pulled out a plain white envelope. "For the boy," he said, sliding it across the counter. Clara hesitated, her brows knitting in confusion. "It's not charity," he added quickly. "It's recognition." He left before she could argue, the bell above the door chiming softly behind him. Only when she opened the envelope did she realize the gesture's weight, a stack of crisp bills, enough to do more than just buy a few meals, enough to spark something bigger. And though Clara didn't know it yet, this was just the beginning. A few days later, the soft chime of the diner's doorbell announced Ricardo's return. But this time, he didn't wear the mask of an ordinary customer. He walked in with purpose, holding a thick envelope in one hand and a confident smile on his face. Clara, wiping down the counter, looked up, surprised but curious. "We never properly met," Ricardo began, extending a hand. "Ricardo Silva. Entrepreneur, investor, and someone who doesn't believe in coincidences." Clara blinked, recognition dawning. The name was familiar, almost legendary in the business world. But why was he standing in her small diner? Ricardo didn't waste time. He laid the envelope on the counter, tapping it lightly. 200,000 raise, he said, voice steady. "Not as a handout, but as an investment. I saw what you did for that boy. It wasn't just kindness, it was leadership. You didn't wait for someone else to fix the problem, you acted. That's rare. And rare qualities deserve rare opportunities." He pulled out a folder alongside the envelope. "This is a preliminary contract. My proposal: open your own cafe, not just any cafe, but a social hub. A place where kids like Leo can find warmth, food, and maybe even a path forward." Clara stared at the documents, then back at Ricardo, struggling to process the whirlwind unfolding before her. "Why me?" she finally asked, voice almost a whisper. Ricardo's smile softened. "Because you remind me of someone who once gave me a chance when the world had nothing else to offer. I'm just passing that torch." The rain had stopped outside, but inside the diner it felt like the calm after a storm. The kind of calm where new beginnings quietly take root. Clara stood frozen, the weight of the offer sinking in like the first rays of sunlight after a storm. 200,000 raise, a contract for her own cafe. It sounded surreal, like one of those stories people tell, but you never quite believe. She glanced at Ricardo, searching his face for signs of exaggeration or hidden motives. But there was only sincerity, an invitation, not an obligation, and that's what made her decision easier. With a deep breath, she nodded, words catching in her throat. "Yes, I'll do it. Not just for me, but for kids like Leo." Tears welled up as she thought about the countless children she'd seen wandering the streets, cold, hungry, invisible to most. This cafe could be more than a business. It could be a safe haven, a place where no child would be turned away. Clara reached out, shaking Ricardo's hand firmly. "But there's one condition," she added, surprising even herself. "This cafe has to give back. Free meals for kids in need, mentorship programs, and a community pantry. If I'm doing this, it has to mean something." Ricardo's grin widened. "Now that is the kind of partner I was hoping for." The rest of the diner faded into the background as they discussed the first steps. Clara's mind raced with ideas: what the space would look like, who she'd hire, how she'd make every corner feel welcoming. But beneath all the excitement was a quiet determination. This wasn't just about opening a cafe. It was about proving that one act of kindness could spark a chain reaction. And though she didn't know it yet, the next link in that chain was already waiting to unfold. The cafe plan was already in motion when Clara found herself facing a thought she couldn't shake off. Leo. The boy had become a constant presence, helping with chores at the diner, sharing stories between bites of leftover pie. He smiled more now, but there was always that flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, the kind that only comes from not knowing where you'll sleep next. Clara knew feeding him wasn't enough. He needed stability, safety, a home. And if she was about to build a place for kids like him, why not start with the one who sparked it all? When she mentioned this to Ricardo, his response was immediate. "Let's make it happen." The very next day he walked into the diner with an attorney, a calm, middle-aged woman named Teresa, who spoke with the kind of clarity that made complicated things sound simple. "Temporary guardianship," she explained, sliding the paperwork across the table. "It's the first step. It gives you legal authority to care for Leo while we work on something more permanent." Clara hesitated, pen hovering above the signature line. It wasn't the responsibility that scared her. It was the fear of not being enough. But then she looked at Leo, wiping down tables with a focus only kids take seriously. How could she doubt herself when the answer was right there, smiling back at her? Signing the papers felt less like a formality and more like a promise. Within days, Leo had a room in Clara's small apartment, a mattress on the floor, walls decorated with hand-drawn superheroes, and a shelf slowly filling with books. It wasn't perfect, but it was his. And as Clara tucked him in that first night, she realized something profound. Sometimes, family isn't about blood. It's about showing up day after day, rain or shine. What she didn't know was that this new chapter would soon intersect with an even bigger dream, the cafe itself. With the check deposited and Leo now officially under her care, Clara dove headfirst into planning the cafe. She didn't just want a place that served coffee and pastries. Anyone could do that. She envisioned a community hub, a warm corner of the world where no one felt invisible. The name came naturally, Cafe of Hope. A space where every cup poured would fuel more than caffeine. It would fuel possibility. She spent late nights sketching layouts on napkins, calculating budgets with a mix of excitement and anxiety. Ricardo, true to his word, connected her with suppliers who believed in projects with purpose, often giving discounts just because they believed in her vision. The walls of her tiny apartment quickly filled with sticky notes, menus, schedules, volunteer shifts. Clara wanted the cafe to do more than serve food. It had to serve the community. One corner would be a kids' spot, stocked with books, crayons, and puzzles. Another would be dedicated to a community pantry where anyone could leave or take non-perishables without judgment. And every evening, leftover meals would be packed into containers and handed out to anyone who needed them. It wasn't charity in the traditional sense, it was dignity, served alongside fresh bread and strong coffee. Leo, ever the curious helper, threw himself into the project like it was an adventure. He picked out bright blue chairs because, as he explained, blue feels like a hug. Clara laughed but bought the chairs anyway. Every decision, from the music that would hum softly in the background to the locally sourced pastries, was made with one question in mind. Will this make someone feel seen? As the opening day crept closer, Clara realized something. This cafe wasn't just about serving the community. It was about rebuilding lives, one small gesture at a time. And the biggest gesture was yet to come. Opening day arrived with the kind of crisp morning air that makes everything feel possible. The Cafe of Hope stood proudly on the corner of the neighborhood, its fresh coat of pastel yellow paint almost glowing under the sun. A chalkboard sign by the door read, "Good coffee, better community." But it wasn't just about the coffee, and everyone knew it. Clara stood at the entrance, heart pounding, as the first few customers trickled in, neighbors, curious passers-by, and even a few kids from the nearby park. And right there by her side, wiping down tables with the focus of a seasoned pro, was Leo. He wore a tiny apron that read, "Hope Crew," grinning from ear to ear. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed with more than just caffeine. The kids' spot was already busy, children flipping through books while parents chatted over pastries. A corner shelf, labeled "Take What You Need," held canned goods, diapers, and school supplies. No questions asked, no judgments made. And right near the register, a small bulletin board displayed job postings, community events, and handwritten notes like, "Thank you for this space. It's more than coffee. It's kindness." Ricardo arrived quietly, standing near the back, watching it all unfold without needing recognition. His job was done, and the torch had truly passed. But the real magic happened around lunchtime. Clara, balancing 3 plates on one arm, glanced toward the window and froze. A group of kids, clearly street kids like Leo once was, hovered near the entrance, unsure if they were welcome. Without missing a beat, Leo waved them in. "First meal's always free," he called out, voice steady and proud. And just like that, the cafe's mission wasn't just an idea anymore. It was alive, thriving, and already expanding in ways Clara had only dreamed of. But the ripple effect? That was only just beginning. The Cafe of Hope quickly became more than just a local hangout. Word spread like wildfire, first through the neighborhood, then across the city. Parents mentioned it at school gates, church groups organized meetups there, and soon social media caught wind of the little cafe with the big heart. That's when Ricardo decided it was time for the world to hear the full story. One morning, he walked in with a small film crew, cameras discreetly tucked away until Clara looked up, wiping flour off her hands. "What's this?" she asked, half laughing, half suspicious. Ricardo grinned. "You didn't think I'd let all this go unnoticed, did you?" The cameras rolled, but the interviews felt more like conversations. Clara spoke not about her success, but about the community that made it possible. She shared how Leo's smile on that rainy night had been the spark, and how every customer, volunteer, and neighbor had added fuel to the fire. The footage captured quiet moments. Leo teaching a younger boy how to stack chairs, an elderly woman crocheting blankets for the donation corner, a teenage volunteer explaining fractions, to a wide-eyed child over a shared cookie. It wasn't just a cafe, it was proof that small kindnesses, stacked together, could build something unshakable. When the video went live, it exploded. Thousands of views turned into hundreds of thousands, then millions. Comments poured in from strangers across the country, some offering donations, others asking how they could start something similar in their own communities. Clara, ever humble, brushed off the attention. "I didn't do anything special," she told one reporter. But Ricardo, watching from the side, knew better. She hadn't just opened a cafe. She'd opened a door to hope, to action, to the belief that one person really can make a difference. And that belief, it was spreading faster than anyone expected. Months turned into a year, and the Cafe of Hope didn't just survive, it thrived. What started as a cozy corner in one neighborhood soon inspired 2 more locations, each one run by someone who had once walked through Clara's doors looking for help. The cafe became more than a business. It was a movement. Schools partnered with Clara to offer after-school programs, local farmers donated fresh produce, and a nearby bakery sent unsold bread every evening. But the heart of it all remained the same. No one left hungry, and everyone left seen. Leo, now 11 and proudly calling himself the cafe's assistant manager, had transformed too. He no longer looked over his shoulder, worried about where he'd sleep. Instead, he greeted customers with the confidence of someone who belonged. He even started a weekend program, teaching younger kids basic cooking skills. Because everyone should know how to make pancakes, he'd joke, flipping golden brown stacks like a pro. The cafe's walls slowly filled with photos of smiling faces, thank you notes, and drawings from children whose lives had been touched by the place. But the most symbolic addition was the plaque Clara hung beside the entrance. It was simple, just a wooden sign with hand-painted letters. Here, kindness never stops. And it didn't. Customers carried the cafe's spirit into their own lives, paying for strangers' groceries, mentoring kids in need, starting small community projects. The ripple effect had become a wave, one that showed no signs of slowing. And as Clara locked up one evening, lights twinkling through the window, she smiled. This had never been just about coffee. It was about proving that even the smallest act of kindness could echo further than anyone imagined. So here's the thing. Clara never planned to change lives. She wasn't chasing recognition, fortune, or some feel-good story. She just saw a kid in the rain and chose kindness. That's it. One simple act. Yet look at the ripple effect. It gave Leo a home, built a cafe that now feeds dozens of kids, and sparked a movement that's reaching far beyond Florianopolis. And it all started because she didn't wait for the perfect moment to help. She just acted. Now ask yourself, how many moments like that have you walked past without noticing? What if you stopped waiting for the right time to make a difference? It doesn't have to be as big as opening a cafe. It could be buying an extra sandwich for someone hungry, checking in on a neighbor, or offering encouragement to someone struggling. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. You never know who's watching. Not in a creepy, paranoid way, but in the sense that your actions might inspire someone else to step up. Just like Ricardo saw Clara, just like Leo saw hope for the first time in who knows how long. So, what's it gonna be? Will today be just another day, or will you choose to be the start of someone else's chain reaction? If this story moved you even a little, don't just scroll away. Share it, talk about it, and hey, why not hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications? Because stories like this, they're not rare, they're happening everywhere all the time. And the next one, it might just start with you.